Beyond the east parking lot, at the NCAP building of the College of Western Idaho lies a garden. Slightly empty now, as this was filmed during early spring 2021. In a few months, it will be flourishing with vegetable and fruit plants. Along the edges, what may appear to be weeds to the untrained eye are young native plants of the Pollinator Garden. Under the direction of Dusty Perkins, Associate Professor of Biology at the school, work-study students and Biology Club members have worked hard to bring this garden to life. Dusty Perkins shares some of the history and the origins of the project.
The idea started with really kind of looking at this space that we're standing in now. And the early development of this space actually started with a milkweed garden that is right here on site. And that garden is an experimental garden that looks at different milkweeds from across the Intermountain West. So in realizing that we had infrastructure out here and we were already serving pollinators with a milkweed garden, and we had this campus garden that also benefits from pollinators, it was a natural fit to build that transition with a pollinator demonstration garden. And it became very apparent that the public started seeing these garden areas, and on weekends I would come out and see people wandering around the gardens and wondering what they were and what was growing. And this vision of a pollinator garden now has educational interpretive signage to engage the public and to tell them about what we're trying to do out here with respect to pollinator conservation, building pollinator habitat, and creating a sense of place for our community to understand the role of pollinators in the ecosystem. I think we most oftentimes think of pollinators as these creatures that do a service for flower reproduction. But we don't oftentimes think of the bigger picture benefits of pollination. And for humans, we often think of ourselves first, and so we think of food production. What we don't think about, though, is the stability of ecosystems and the functioning of ecosystems and the vital role that pollinators play in maintaining genetic diversity in wild populations of plants. And that makes those populations more resilient to ecosystem change, which is happening all over the globe at a pace more rapidly than it's happened in a long time. We also don't look at pollinators as food, but outside of bees, there are moths and butterflies who have larvae, and those moths and butterflies are pollinators that feed on nectar as adults, but their larvae actually feed on the plants and are food for a lot of birds. Something like 3/4 of the diet for some birds are moth and butterfly larvae that are eating plants.
Alongside the Pollinator Garden is the Campus Garden, where students not only learn where their food comes from and how to grow it, but also are able to benefit in the harvest. Andrea Shoemaker, Department Chair and Assistant Professor in Agriculture, shares the history and impact of the Campus Garden.
So my name is Andrea Shoemaker. I'm an assistant professor in our agriculture department, and I oversee our CWI campus garden, which is primarily a vegetable garden. So as you're exploring all of the spaces throughout this video, this is one component of the gardens that we manage here at CWI. This was really a vision and kind of came to be because we were trying to address food insecurity on campus. So about 4 years ago, we had surveyed students on campus and found that a large percentage, it's over 40% of our students experience some form of food insecurity. So through a Wishing Well grant, we installed this garden space. So it's a lot of hard work from our ag students. We had some capstone students that helped put together this space. The things that we grow in the campus garden, I always tell people, it's amazing the biodiversity from a food system standpoint that you can put in this space. So within this space, we'll grow tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, cucumbers, beans, peas, corn, beets, carrots, potatoes, onions. There's all sorts of things that we can grow in really a pretty small space. So it's exciting because I can bring my students out, we can plant, we get to maintain the garden throughout the growing season, and then my favorite part is the harvest. So being able to come out and harvest the food and then provide all of that food to our students. So We do a U-Pick farmers market a couple times a week. We take all of the produce inside, and then students have access to that produce for free. They just grab a bag and take whatever they want. In any given week, when we're like in peak harvest, we're harvesting between 300 and 400 pounds of vegetables a week. So it's pretty incredible the amount of food that we can pull from such a small space. The aspect that really, I think, ties this all together is the garden space in general. So we've really made a big push to educate the community, so the CWI community, but then the Treasure Valley in general, just about pollinators and what's happening. So with our bee population and colony collapse disorder, we usually like to tell students and just share that awareness that almost 2/3 of your food supply is pollinated by pollinators. The bulk of it definitely is bees, but definitely when we talk about pollinators, we're looking at other things like butterflies, hummingbirds, bats, things like that. And so to think that 2/3 of your food supply wouldn't exist if it wasn't for those pollinators is something that we really want to educate the community about. And so we spent a lot of time trying to create a space that tells that story, and then create a space where those pollinators can come to get the things that they need, which is the food supply, the milkweed. And as you walk through the garden space, hopefully you get to explore and better understand that.
In addition to prepping, planting, and weeding the plants for the pollinators, the Bio Club members also have made bee hotels for the pollinators to set up near the campus garden. Through working on all aspects of the garden and education, the students have been impacted personally as well. Members of the club share their thoughts.
Yeah, I'd say the pollinator habitat and pollinator awareness has become extremely important in our life. We definitely do things around our house with being more mindful of pollinators and their habitat, and it's something that we tell our friends and family about too. So having this pollinator garden here has definitely raised more awareness to students and their close family and friends as well.
Working with Dusty, I've learned a lot about little tiny landscaping techniques that you can use to provide a better space for native pollinators. So like leaving bare patches of dirt, or implementing bee hotels, bug hotels, just little things that are really easy to do in your own yard.
Lastly, Dusty would like to give his thanks to the students that participated in the garden, as well as his hopes for the future of the space.
I would like to acknowledge all of the students that played a role in the conception and development of this garden and of many of the campus projects that are at CWI. So the garden, here we're starting to see it take shape and look like a pollinator demonstration garden, but that took a lot of work. That took students coming together to commission the production of signs. That took students coming together to do the groundwork of getting the site prepared and controlling some of the weeds. That took students to plant the plants, and it's going to take students in the future to maintain this and keep it something that looks like a pollinator demonstration garden. And so this is really something that's been built on 3 years of work by the Biology Club that is finally coming to fruition, and it feels really good to be part of that. And I just want to say thanks to everybody that played a role in making this happen. I hope that this garden becomes a legacy of our campus and is just the start. I hope that this garden is just the start of what our campus grows into. A campus that understands its place in the urban and rural interface. A campus that understands the value and respects the value of biodiversity. And a campus that builds in green spaces for people to come and to be and to connect with nature and to remember all the things that are part of this world, especially when we get bogged down in our day-to-day lives.